I'm Beverly, and I'm on the witness stand. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the witness stand. We are going to discuss the wife dismemberment trial. It's kind of gross, but anyway, we were going to talk about the returned mail trial. When this thing started, the return mail trial, when it started, it was during the verdict watch for the honor killing, and Court TV was great about showing it. And Court TV has the monopoly on everything trial, and as soon as the verdict came in, they decided they weren't going to show that anymore. So now, at this point in time, the returned mail trial is over, and the man was found not guilty. I don't know enough about that at this point. I was in the beginning research stage, so I don't really know what the turning point was for that. But needless to say, we are moving on. We have an in-depth look at the wife dismemberment trial. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this trial is going to be the craziest thing. You're not going to believe it. I don't believe that anybody that's been watching it from day one would believe it. I had 29 pages of notes. I had to go back and try to add some pieces and parts together, take out a bunch of stuff to try to make it much more concise, so that I can't give you every little detail because we would be on here for a week. So I'm going to give you the best I can, and I will answer your questions in any comments that you post. I'm going to try to get through this in one video. It may be a part 1 and part 2 because it is so much to it. So let's start out. This is Georgia versus Nicholas, and wait till I tell you his name. Nicholas James Casotis, also known as, aka, Nicholas Killian James Stark, S-T-A-R-K. I never really got a clear answer as to why he changed his name, except for an implied that he was trying to stay hidden, which, get your notepads up, guys, because this is a big one. Okay, so Georgia versus Nicholas Casotis. His wife, Mindy Mebane Casotis, was a 40-year-old writer and a businesswoman. She was from New Orleans and had a master's, in public and international affairs. She was found dismembered in the woods of the Portal, P-O-R-T-A-L, hunting club spanning 2 counties, which was Liberty and McIntosh counties in Georgia. So her remains were scattered over those 2 counties. Hunters discovered her, and they found her on December 2nd, but it was subsequent findings, lab findings and DNA and stuff, that they estimated that she had been placed there between November 27th and November 28th. So that would be around Thanksgiving of that year. We'll get back to more of that later. I just wanted to give you an idea about her. What I would say about, I'll go back. Let me go to him first. Her husband, Nicholas James or whatever, was a JAG officer in the Navy. And I'm trying to see, I'm going to try to give you her husband, Nicholas James Casotis, was also, I told you, using the other name of Stark. He was a former JAG officer in the U.S. Navy, and he became a suspect. Now, for those of you who do not know what a JAG is, it's a Judge Advocate General Corps. That's the Corps he's in, but a Judge Advocate General. Now, what that really comes down to is you're an attorney in the military, the Navy branch. I wonder if it's U.S. Armed Forces. I guess it might be all military, not necessarily Navy. I don't know. That's beyond me. I'm not going to look that up right now. He became the suspect after months of identity verification through genealogy and DNA. After months of identity verification using genealogy and DNA, you know that genealogy is being used for everything. I mean, everything nowadays. Mine's in the system, so Big Brother might be watching me. Okay, it took a while. So, and you know, DNA takes some time. It's not like you can send it off today. And even if you're FBI or whatever, you can't get it back tomorrow. It takes a little bit. So they use these two forms or two methods to identify her. And her identity was confirmed on May 11th, 23. Now remember, she was found December 2nd of 22. It was 6 months later that they figured out who she was. And I just hate that. And then Nicholas was arrested the day after, so on May 12th, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where he had moved to. Get ready to pencil this in. He lived in a lot of places. He faces charges including malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, tampering with evidence, and removal of body parts from a death scene. So I'm going to tell you really quick about the difference between malice murder and felony murder. And I'm really boiling this down, but it has everything to do with intent. So malice murder is when you intend to murder. So if I go and say, I'm going to kill my husband, and I shoot and kill him. If I think I'm going to go kill my husband and that's what I go do, then that is malice murder. That was the explicit intent of killing my husband. And my husband doesn't like me using him for examples, but if I was to say felony murder, what that means is it's murder in the commission of another felony. So for example, I go to rob a convenience store, and in the midst of that robbery, which is a robbery, that's a felony. And then I go in and people get killed. Even if it's a bystander, it's the person that works there. Even if a bystander kills somebody, even if anything happens and somebody is murdered, now I'm going to be tried for felony murder because it was maybe not the intent. Maybe your intent was just to rob the store, but in your commission of that felony, somebody was killed. So that's the difference, okay? Specifically going after that person, or in the event of another commission of a felony. So either way, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. You are going to get up to, well, if it's a death penalty state, definitely. I don't know if Georgia is, but life without parole on both of them. You can get up to that. Death, if that state is a death penalty state, or life without parole. So convict them either one, they're going to get probably the same sentence. Okay, so he was given a $5 million cash bond or a $10 million property bond. Pretty set. I mean, it's putting up cash or putting up something else. And that was initially set in 23, and a request to reduce it was denied in February 24. Mainly because they thought he might flee, on the understanding that he had multiple driver's licenses and AKAs and stuff like that. So, yeah, they thought, this guy, at this point, they knew that he had a lot of lies behind him, okay? Now, on August 5th, the trial began. But what I want to go back and tell you a little bit about Mindy was who I was telling you I wanted to talk about more. They said she was a 40-year-old writer. I went back and looked at everything I could find, Mindy, and there's no accounts, credible accounts of anything that she's written. No published articles, peer-reviewed articles for a college, or nothing that anybody can verify. No books, fiction, nonfiction, fiction, nothing can be found that she's written. I don't know. I don't know if her parents thought she was a writer. I don't know. There's so much of this that's not credible, and so much of this that's hard to find. And when her parents testified, you could probably understand why it's difficult to get some information too. So her claim is that, or people around her claimed that she was a writer, but we can't verify it. Now, her husband, I told you, was a JAG officer, and then he went to work in the Pentagon. I don't know if he worked in the Pentagon as a JAG officer or if it was another, position. I don't know. But he did work in the Pentagon in Virginia. And that was Alexandria, Virginia. Yeah, I think that was it. Okay, so he worked there. And I think they met when they were both in Virginia. I don't really know how they met. So this couple, I say this a lot when I'm doing commentary. I don't know, because true crime baffles me. And I guess that's why I'm so interested. And it probably is the same for you. It's like a puzzle that you want to put together. Only the true crime sense, when there is an outcome, a lot of times we're just trying to see how the individual pieces of the puzzle fit. And that's maybe what's interesting. I know it is to me. This couple, there is no credible evidence for how they met for anything except for apparently they met when they were both in Virginia. I don't know what she was doing for a job in Virginia. Apparently that's when he was working for the Pentagon. The only thing we really have to go on is that they were married in 2016, and there begins their life together. So 2016 to 22, that would be 6 years, approximately 6 years that they were married. At least that's the approximate. How do you not have a record of, or how does no one how did the parents not know this stuff, or them not reporting it? Okay, August 5th, the trial began. And I know I've got a lot to catch up on, but guys, please forgive me. I am a boomer, and I am still having some technical difficulties, and I'm learning as I go. The first day, we have David Lovett, who comes to the stand. He was the hunter who stumbled upon Mindy's torso on December 2nd. This is a huge 25,000 acre property that the Portal Hunt Club owned, and I don't know anything about hunting, but what it seems like is that the hunters would surround or cordon off an area or something to that effect, and they would chase out the deer. It doesn't matter. Anyway, where they were hunting, David Lovett came upon something that was laying kind of in a ditch, and from what I understand, it was in water, I think, and he thought it was a hog. Now, before you go laughing and stuff about this, we have, especially in the South, we have a lot of wild boar, and that's probably other places, but I just know about this because it's Southern. But if you saw something like that, it could easily look like, from a distance, a wild boar or a hog that had been killed. It could have looked like that. So it makes sense to us, but those of you from not here or what they say, not from these parts, I could see where you question that, but it is pretty common here, okay? So then when he stayed with the torso while somebody else went to call law enforcement, or they called law enforcement there, but somebody went, because it was down a dirt, it's a secluded area. So someone else went to the highway to bring in, law enforcement when they came. Next, and I think it was the next day, they went back out. The hunters went back out, and then Philip McCollar, another hunter, found a human leg about roughly 20 yards off of the road, pieces and parts. They called in the GBI, which is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and like an FBI, but it's Georgia State investigation. Anyway, this agent, Brett Dickerson, came in, and he just sort of set the scene and unraveled a lot of the other pieces to this. I'm trying to see if I have. No, I think I took that part out because it's not really. It was a lot more information about the finding of the body parts. Okay, so Agent Dickerson talked about, he walked the jury through the evidence, okay, including the body parts and all of these parts. There was the torso, which had 2 arms attached, but one was almost severed. They found a right leg, then they found the left leg, and then they found her head. So other pieces and parts of her, I'm not 100% sure what the other pieces and parts were, but he said that they also found plastic totes and blood, and they did test on that blood. Maybe when they say the other pieces and parts, they're describing that they found the other leg and the head. You get what I'm saying though, okay? Over a course of, they didn't find it all in the same spot, and they didn't find the body altogether. They found it in parts, scattered, 2 counties. But from what I understand, that the Hunt Club it kind of straddles the counties. So I don't know who had jurisdiction. I mean, who would have jurisdiction? The one with the most parts? I don't think that was ever talked about either, because I think that would have stuck out in my head. Okay, so then he talked about how they decided to, he also talked about testing and where they tested as far as sites of possible crime scenes. They talked about that a little bit later, but that day it was primarily finding the body and starting to test. Now remember, they couldn't identify this body until like 6 months later. So once they found out who she was, they found out where she lived, and of course they went and arrested the husband. But they went to the last place that she lived, which was in Savannah. Once they had gone into the Savannah home and performed several tests, including luminol test, which is the presence of blood. You've probably seen it on all of these shows where they spray and then they use a black light and it shows up and it glows. Well, it doesn't do what you see in TV where they spray it and they hold a black light up and all these blood splatters are everywhere. It's not really like that, because it doesn't last that long. So you spray and you take pictures, and you spray and you take pictures. But the thing about it is that it doesn't glow like you see neon in the TV shows and the movies. It's not like that. It's like a quick thing that's, you can tell that the black light has to be used, but you can also see that it's I mean, you know it's there, but you don't see it out like that. So, okay, so they went in and they used a chemical reagent, which is the luminol, which checks for blood, but it was called, the brand name was called Blue Star. And so you will hear them talking about Blue Star. When they sprayed the Blue Star around the room, it lit up on a blue futon. So it was kind of like to the side. And it was confirmed that it was the presence of human blood. Now, I think it was a significant amount of blood, but it wasn't like somebody bled out. You know, it wasn't anything like that. But, you know, it was blood. And there were some other stains that they found around the house, but they couldn't attribute it to anything. Well, they didn't have enough evidence to say that this is part of a crime scene. Okay, so they couldn't do that. And then Anthony Brown was from the U.S. Marshals Task Force, who described securing the area and coordinating the crime scene log. You know, there's always somebody, an investigator, that has to go in and has to record everything that's found. So that's what he did. So you've got hunters, and you've got GBI Special Agent Brett Dickerson, and you've got Anthony Brown from the U.S. Marshals. Now, in the opening statements, the state leaned into this narrative about how Casotis, as a former prosecutor, which is interesting because remember, he was a JAG officer. I found this very interesting, that he would know how to clean it up, you know, how to kill somebody and get away with it more than likely. Well, I promise you that he didn't do that very well, but he would have some inside knowledge as to how to potentially cover this crime scene up, or the crime in itself. They also found some cleaning wipes and stuff like that that appeared to look like someone was trying to erase evidence. And then the defense, I can't wait to get to tell you this, the defense portrayed him as a victim of manipulation and coercion, painting a picture, get ready, painting a picture of this conspiracy of this mysterious man, Jim McIntyre, who was an alleged FBI impersonator. He controlled their lives, and they lived under the fear of this man. And when I get through telling you this, just getting you caught up through day 5, you're not going to believe it. There's so many questions for which we have no answers. Okay, so they emphasized the absence of Nicholas having no motive or intent which I think you'll figure that out as being not true. And then they challenged the prosecution's timeline, the forensic interpretation, and Nicholas's version of events, meaning Mindy in the hospital, had not been disproven by reasonable doubt. I have reasonable doubt just at the top of this. So, okay, day 2. And I know I've got you confused, but that's okay. I'm getting ready to watch day 6 and I'm still confused. Day 2, additional witnesses from the prosecution. We're still in the prosecution case. State's case still. Lindsay Smith, GBI special agent, preserved the maggots and helped define post-mortem timeline and put forensic, is that entomology? I don't know. The study of bugs. She sort of put it in a way that made some sense based on what condition the maggots were in or what stages, that kind of thing. All right, then you've got Kelly Larson, a forensic artist. They were trying, remember, 6 months before they identified. So they were trying everything they could. Well, the face on the head of Mindy was too disfigured to be able to take a picture of and show. There was no way they could fix it so that they could show a picture. You know, they can do that at times, but they had no way of doing that. So they brought in this forensic artist who could look at some bone structure and things like that and could make a rendering. And that's what she did. And they used that to try to get some sort of visual reference and some to try to help with some crime scene context, you know, that kind of thing. And Peter Hershey, who was a car dealership representative, I think it was Ford, and Dean Glover, public works director, and they were really brought into the picture. I thought it was weird, but then I figured out there's information regarding on the car a GPS thing or some GPS capability, or, you know, a lot of cars nowadays are made whether you think they've got GPS or not. They really do, which is another way of Big Brother watching you. You can't figure out how to commit a crime without somebody being able to tie you to a scene. And then the public works guy, I think, was just talking about site access to the area where her body was found. And then you have Brittany Gresham. She's also from the GBI, and she's a forensic toxicologist, where she talked about all of the toxicology tests that were done and what was effective, what was not, what was productive, and what was not. And it really came down to a lot of things being very difficult to prove or disprove because of the condition and not knowing where the crime scene was. And as you can imagine, they could tell that the person had not bled out where the body was found. So it was difficult to get results from those lab tests. All right, let's go to motive. Motive and context. In pretrial motions, the state uncovered a $1.5 million divorce judgment against Nicholas, who for his ex-wife. So apparently he had an ex-wife and her name was Heather. I don't remember her last name. But in the course of that divorce settlement, he owed $1.5 million to that ex-wife. And the prosecutors are saying that because he couldn't pay it, there were no kids. So I don't know. It had to have been property or something. I don't know. But anyway, he got that judgment against him. And prosecutors argued that maybe he couldn't pay for it. He lied and told Mindy all kinds of stories and said they had to go on the run. But they were, according to her, there was another reason, a security reason. But according to the state's prosecution, they think that maybe he was on the run trying to avoid paying that money. Then the defense counters with a claim that the couple was living in fear of that mysterious FBI agent named Jim McIntyre. But he's a shadowy figure. Yeah, they were in grave danger, said the defense, from this man. According to his attorney, they mostly lived on the move, telling people that they were trying to escape this man. The state has sharply criticized this, saying that the state is saying that this is a CIA conspiracy type theory. And notably, the defense has not figured out a way to dispel that. They just haven't. And I don't really say that they've tried. It's been a weird defense. Okay, so on day 3, we get the mother and father of Mindy that are testifying. Okay, let me set this up for you. On day 3, it got really interesting. So going back to the backstory on this, when I say that Nicholas conspired to tell this story of this FBI man, there was never, no one has been given a reason as to why this guy went after them in the first place, why this entire thing happened. Where did this Jim McIntyre come in? If Nicholas told people, including Mindy, that this figure was supposedly protecting them from harm, how did this guy get involved? And harm from what? That would be the million-dollar question. Nicholas apparently told everybody that this Jim McIntyre told them that they were going to be harmed if they didn't go into some kind of protection mode. And so they had a security team, office, group, I don't know what you want to call it, but they had this security people watching out for them. But they could only have contact with the security through Jim McIntyre. But he said they couldn't call him, only he could call them. And they didn't know what his phone number was because he used burner phones. He used different phone numbers every day. He said they usually heard from him once a day, at least. They could only text him through Signal. Now, there was text, my understanding, back and forth. And if you don't know what Signal is, an encrypted messaging app where I could send messages back and forth to an FBI agent. And after a short period of time, the messages go away. So it's encrypted. You're not supposed to be able to find it. You can. Because somehow or another, the powers that be in the telephone, internet, whatever, online, can go back and pull that from Signal. I don't know how, and I don't know how you can advertise your stuff as being encrypted if somebody can go in and find it. I think it would be somebody really big, like the government, big FBI sort of thing. But they're saying, or he is saying, that that's the only way that they could contact or be contacted was through Signal. They couldn't use emails. They couldn't use anything. And Mindy had some friends that the friends had to talk to her through Signal. It's just so bizarre. So they said that this was their point of contact and everything had to be around them. Be around him. They started out living in Alexandria, Virginia, and they moved to several places. And I think I have that somewhere down. Let me see if I can find. I don't know. Just know that they moved in a bunch of different places. And finally, they moved in with, Nicholas and Mindy moved in with Mindy's, they call him the middle brother, but there were 3 siblings. Mindy, Frank the Fourth, which her dad was Frank the Third. So Frank the Fourth, and the youngest sibling of Mindy would have been Matthew. Matthew was still in high school at this time. So they were living with Frank the Fourth's wife. Don't know if they had a kid at that time, but I think they had a little child. And Matthew, the youngest, and Mindy's mom and dad. So that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 people altogether living under one roof. Well, things got tense. And so the Frank the Fourth told them they had to leave. Mindy and Nicholas told them they had to leave. I don't know what, was reported as the issue because it never really was explained. But they just said things like differences, family tension, stuff like that. But the boy, Frank the Fourth, who owned the house, told them that they were going to sell because they were taking advantage of the housing market at that time and they needed everybody to get out. But funny, I don't think he was telling Mindy's mom and dad, but maybe he was. But they definitely were telling Nicholas and Mindy to get out. When Frank IV gave them a deadline when to get out, they didn't meet that deadline. They were still there, and Frank IV had to start eviction process on them. So when they left, the middle brother, Frank, when they left with him, Nicholas and Mindy moved to Hilton Head. So there were like maybe 2 other states in between this, but they moved to Hilton Head with Mindy's parents. So now you've got 4 and the youngest son. But the youngest son was apparently a very good baseball player, and that he was getting seen by some colleges and things like that. And so for an opportunity for him to play ball, the father moved with him to a different state. I don't remember what state it was, but they stayed there for a year until they moved back. Suffice it to say that Matthew lived with them a portion of that time. Then the Mindy's father, moved back home. Do you see how this, you need to write it on a whiteboard to just figure this out. So Mindy's father moved back, and I think now at that point, Matthew was in college. And that all had been taken care of. It was set, and, Matthew never lived with them again, I don't think. But Mindy's father had to come back, and it also surrounded a time where Mindy's father had to have knee surgery. Now, it might be that they moved back because of settling Matthew and to get this knee surgery, because he was going to have some help. So, of course, Nicholas was the one to help him. I guess it would be pretty easy for Nicholas to be the one to take care of him because he's home all the time, right? There is no record of how these two, Nicholas and Mindy, made their living. No record of it. Yes, he was a JAG officer, but from that point forward, there was no record of money being made. I don't know what they were doing. What they told the family was that Nicholas was working, and they said he worked on his laptop every day, but they never saw what it was that they were working on or he was working on. They felt like it was none of their business, so they just didn't bother with it. Now, I would have liked a little bit more information, but that's just me, okay? Maybe there are other people out there that it's hard to believe that there are other people out there as naive as all of these people. I think Frank IV had their number. So you may be saying, why is Mindy not helping with her father? Well, Mindy reportedly had health problems at that point in time also, which if you listen to Nicholas, could have been anything from COVID to heart conditions, to heart blood pressure, to something more serious with the heart, to, what was the other thing? Maybe kidney. I don't know. There was a lot of things, different things. But anyway, so she had health issues, and she stayed in bed most of the time. And she also was reported that she didn't leave the house for a couple of years. So I know toward the end of her life, she didn't leave the house. And she was terrified to leave because this Jim McIntyre told them that they were after her and Nicholas, but, she was really afraid. So we don't know how they made money, but he was home all the time. They said that they saw him on the computer, but they did not know because apparently it was top secret. They did say that he told them he was working in developing some new software or new app or something like that from Microsoft, and that it was top secret and that he couldn't tell them what it was. But when it was finally approved, and I guess it was bought, he was doing it for Microsoft, but bought by Microsoft, I think. It's so convoluted that there would be lots of money on the back end. So I'm sure they thought they'll get money then. But until then, I don't know what they were doing. Are they living off of Mindy and Mindy's parents? I just don't know. Absolutely don't know. Okay, so now that you know that part, there were lies told to her family. Okay, I gave you the backstory on Mindy and Nicholas, and I gave you the openings, a brief opening statement and defense statement, and for refuting the state's opening. So that's probably the best that you can say. And I've told you where they didn't work, and I've told you about some family tensions and where they all lived. Okay, so We are going to come to the part where Nicholas and Mindy were living with Mindy's parents in Hilton Head. I have given you so much information, and I know that it has to be so confusing right now. Hopefully, confusion will make some sense. I don't know that the story will ever make sense, but hopefully some of it's coming together for you. But I'm going to stop here because this is long enough and this is confusing enough. So I'm going to stop here and stay tuned for part 2, where we get into day 3, where Mindy's parents testify. And Lord, you don't want to miss that one. It's a cliffhanger, I know, but it is a cliffhanger worth coming back to. So until our part 2, you may step off the witness stand. I'm Beverly, and I'm on the witness stand.